Hello, and welcome to the Church Revitalization Podcast, brought to you by the Malfers Group team, where each week we tackle important, actionable topics to help churches thrive. And now, here's your hosts, Scott Ball and AJ Matthew.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Church Revitalization Podcast. This is episode 79, and we're glad you're back with us. As always, there's Scott over there, and I'm AJ. And today, Scott, we're talking about the 11 church hospitality tips that you could employ to better serve guests in your church. And I guess it's a good time of year to be thinking about that because Easter's right around the corner. If you're listening to this when we are putting this out in March.
We're about a month away, right?
Yeah, I guess we're a month or so away. So, but and you know what's great about this list is that this is not like rocket science, complicated things where you're having to, spend $10,000 to redo your lobby. These are some practical things that could be thrown in this week, next week. You could probably maybe spruce up several of these just to maybe have that edge that might make, one more family come back, or 10 or 100, depending on how many you're expecting to show up anyway. So I think this is a good list, Scott.
Yeah, I think it's important. It's not the big things, really, I think, for the most part, that make guests come or not come, or stay or not stay. It's a combination of a lot of the little things. It really adds up. And so these are all relatively small things. Some of them might require a lot of effort. So being about a month away from Easter, these are the kinds of things, spring cleaning, if you want to think of it that way, things you want to do to just to be ready for Easter and ready to serve guests this Easter. Because I think, AJ, I could be wrong, but I think there are a lot of people who maybe have been out from church in person for a long time that are maybe targeting Easter or around Easter, just before or just after, as when they're maybe thinking about coming back. If they've got plans to come back, and there's probably a lot of folks that don't, but if there are folks that have plans to come back, they may be looking at around this time of year.
Yeah, I actually hadn't really thought of that. So it could be that will turn Easter of 2021 into the kind of back to church thing that we would normally look at in the fall, recurring each year. So yeah, so maybe this would bring back some of those, regular attenders that haven't been there for a while.
Right. Maybe some of your older folks that have had a chance to get vaccinated now, and it will have been over 3 weeks since they got their second dose or whatever. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why some people who maybe were on hold might be not on hold anymore. And so that gives, if that's some inspiration for you on why these small things then will really make a big difference.
Yeah. So, I mean, some of those folks may not, be maybe guests in the true sense of the word, but people always invite people. And so
if you haven't seen them in a year, they're a guest.
maybe you need to have your places looking good for the people that used to be there and haven't been in a while. They're going to say, was it always this bad?
That's right.
Was that carpet always so stained?
They'll notice things that they weren't noticing before.
It could be, a little bit of absence, and all of a sudden they'll have a new perspective. So maybe after this, you can just do a survey, because you might have 100 consultants now come through your doors on Easter that could give you an outsider's view. But they might also just be bringing some other family or friends with them. And maybe that's something that they used to do, and they haven't been back in a while. They're like, you know what, we're going back to church on Easter, and we hope y'all will come with us this year. So, all right, let's do it.
Let's
Number one, guest information online on your website. So, and this is, of course, we've got to put this number one on the list, and this is something that is talked about over and over anyway. And maybe you think, oh, we've taken care of that, but have a fresh look at your website and just make sure that it does provide the information that a guest would be looking for, right, Scott?
Yeah, you might actually be surprised. So I've looked at a lot of church websites, just in what we do. I look at a lot of them, and there's a lot of churches still that they went back to church back to in-person services last summer or maybe in the fall or at some point. But it's been now 4 months, 6 months, 8 months since they went back to church, and it still says we're back. It still has language from 8 months ago. So those are things that they just get a little long in the tooth. You want to again do some spring cleaning on your website, take a fresh look at it and go, okay, is this communicating what we want to communicate? Get back to being clear about how people can find you in person and when your service times. That's another thing that's changed for a lot of churches. Their service times have been weird. They were one service, now they're going back to 2 services, and then at Easter maybe you have a different number of services. So these are all things that you want to look at on your website and make sure it's really good. And that homepage is critical because a guest may only ever look at your homepage.
Yeah.
They're not going to spend 45 minutes clicking through your website. If they don't get the information they're looking for like that, then they're going to be out. This is actually our marketing director, Molly. We could ask her some questions about this sometime because she's got a lot of experience building church websites, and there's a bit of a formula to it. So maybe we should have her on sometime to give us some even more tips. But that homepage is important, and you want it to be good.
Yeah, especially again, talking about Easter, make sure that you've got whatever odd service timing you're going to have on that day. I'll never forget on New Year's Day. New Year's Day was a Sunday, and visited a church and had gone to the website, got the service times, got there, I forget, a half hour, an hour early. And, a couple of people milling around. I'm in the lobby and like, is church starting pretty soon? And they're like, oh no, we're starting at 11 o'clock today. It's like, oh, okay.
Wait, you showed up to this church a half hour before you thought it was going to start?
No, I ended up being a half hour before when they were actually going to start.
I was like, man, you wanted a front row seat.
I was there on time according to when the church was going to start on their website, but it was different because it was it was New Year's Day and they changed their service times. So, but you might be changing your service times on Easter, and make sure that's clear so that people will know.
This is not in the show notes. So if you're listening to this or watching on YouTube, this is a bonus tip for you. This is something just something to think about. AJ and I were talking about this yesterday. Maybe think about offering a special service, that's masks required. Like if you're a church where maybe masks are recommended until you're at your seat, then you can take them off or whatever, something like that. Think about having one service time, adding maybe a special service time, even if it's earlier or whatever, that's masks required. There's a certain segment of the population that might go, man, I'm really glad that they did that because that gave me an opportunity to feel like I could go. I'm not saying you need to do that all the time or every week, but it'd be a nice thing to think about doing, given just depends on what your community is, right? Like what are the attitudes about masks where in your community, or what are the divisions there? I mean, it shouldn't be a political issue one way or the other, but it kind of is. It's not really about science necessarily anymore. It's more about politics. But just know your community and know, hey, is this something that we could do that would serve a certain segment of our community that doesn't go to church normally on Easter this year? Would that convey something to our community that would be loving and kind for a certain segment? So just think about that and think about how you would communicate that online as well. So all of that. And you might think on that same note, AJ, COVID rules are different everywhere in terms of churches.
Yeah.
So it may be that you've been doing services since last October and you feel like everyone knows what our COVID rules are, but your Easter folks maybe don't know. So be sure you're really clear of what are the expectations. The last thing you want to do is show up not wearing a mask and everyone else is wearing one, or you're wearing a mask and no one else is, or, you just want to be really clear about that because it is such a social thing now, right, AJ? Like, it's a part of the fabric of our society in this moment. So be sure you're really clear on that.
Yeah, that's a great point, Scott. And make that really clear on the website so that guests know what is Easter going to look like as far as masks are concerned and cleanliness and the whole 9 yards. I mean, if you're doing
the stuff that you probably did when you first went back, do it all again for Easter.
Yep. you could even shoot a video walkthrough of that. I mean, just when you enter the doors, here's what you can expect. Here's what we're going to do. And yeah, great point. Okay, let's move on to the second one. Number 2 is address guests from the stage. And from just the broader perspective on this point is recognize and welcome guests, not only from the stage, but in a variety of ways. So make sure that you recognize that they're there. Over recognizing it by, making people stand up or tell us a little bit about yourself. No, don't do that.
People hate that.
People just want to know that, hey, that I'm here. That there's people in the room that aren't regularly here. And that's just a great opportunity for you to be able to provide a little nugget of information. Don't overwhelm them with stuff. You might have their attention for a minute whenever you said, hey, if you're a guest, we're so glad that you're here. Tell them the one thing that you would like them to do then at that point. That's your 1 second segue opportunity. You want them to fill out a Connect card. You want them to come to your connection booth afterwards, whatever that might be. But just recognize that they're there. And as we go through the rest of this list, there'll be some other things related to that to make sure that they feel welcome. But the actual verbal welcome is important.
Yeah, I think, again, this isn't in the notes, so this is a bonus for those of you listening. You can ruin your guest welcome. It's rare that I'm going into a church anymore that there isn't some sort of guest welcome. Like, if you're a guest, welcome, we're glad you're here. Fill out this Connect card or whatever. Sometimes that's non-existent, but most of the time that's there. But you can ruin that by then following that up with 15 announcements that make no sense to a guest. So you acknowledged them for 5 seconds, and then for 5 minutes, you talked to the people who are always there. And that just ruined whatever you did for a guest. So you want to be sure, this is something I hammer in with the churches I work with, that Sunday morning is your one opportunity to connect with a guest. They're there. You don't know if they'll ever be to anything else, but you know that they're there right now in that moment. And so you really want to leverage that moment for them, and use your other communication platforms to speak to those people who are already a part of your church. I also want to say, notice your online guests. You're going to have a lot of online guests this Easter. So look in the camera and talk to them. Say, if you're joining us online, we're really glad you're here, and give specific instructions for your online guests, not just for those people who are in the room. So it's a lot, I know, and this is difficult for those of you guys who've been in ministry for 30 years and you've always done it a particular way. These things are changing, but it's important. It's important.
Yeah. Yep. All great points. There's so much nuanced with COVID. I mean, we're up to our eyeballs in this stuff at this point.
You're all pros, but those are the things that I've noticed start to slip, AJ. People were
yes.
good about it, and then they've got used to having folks back in the room, and then they forget the camera.
That's right.
It's like, remember the camera.
It needs to be said. That's right. Yeah, it's been long enough now where you've created new habits. I mean, you've gotten used to doing things a different way, and maybe you might be on your third set of habits now. And so just step back for a minute, take a look, what's going on in my city, how things are happening and shaking down, and make sure that you're relevant for today on Easter Sunday.
It's just a reminder, right? Like, churches did really good about the camera, and then I think they got back to in-person services. They're forgetting that the camera is there. Now it's just like a camera that's propped up while the real thing is happening in the room. You can't treat it that way. You got to look at the camera. Those people are just as much there as the people who are sitting there, and you got to look at that camera. Communicate.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good one. All right, number 3. Sitting in the middle row of seats. So this applies to whether you've got rows of chairs, whether you've got pews. And so this is a little more of an insider's thing. And you could help this, your ushers could certainly help this regardless of whether, it's your regulars or not. But moving towards the interior of a row, leaving the outside, the aisles available. This is just like some good practical tips for, moving people into any space in which we all have to gather. So leaving those ends open, though, guests are really going to prefer to sit near the end of a row. For whatever reason, they want the quick escape if you get too weird. So,
That's right.
I mean, let's call it what it is. They want to feel like, if this place is nuts, I want to get out of here. But
your COVID seating arrangements might be weird right now too. Anyway, so try to encourage your leaders and folks like that to take whatever the most awkward seats are. Don't let those be the ones that are open for guests. Step up and take the weird seats and let the guests have the most convenient ones.
Yeah. Maybe with social distancing, maybe every row is an aisle at this point. You've got gaps, and it won't matter where they sit. But you pew churches, you haven't had that. You haven't had that luxury. You've probably got every other one taped off still, or something like that. So you know what? I know you've got your favorite spot. Move to the middle.
That's right.
All right. Another one is going to be, have a lot of differences depending on what your sanctuary worship center layout is, and even your denomination and traditions. But putting words on the screen, and this one drives me nuts when because you go to churches maybe either don't have screens, and I'm sorry, but come on, let's get some screens. Or you've got them and you just don't really use them effectively. But a guest participating... There's
probably some people, AJ, listening to this thinking, do those churches exist?
Yeah, they do.
They do.
They do indeed exist.
Yeah.
But, so, okay, been in a lot of churches, sang a lot of different songs, sing songs I know, sing songs I don't know. But when I'm in a church and I don't know your songs, and you are not helping me out with the words to your songs, and I'm having to stand there not moving my lips or pretending that I'm singing, it's not my happiest place to be at that moment. So do everybody a favor and just make it easy for them. Right, Scott?
Yeah, I've told this story a few times, maybe even on this podcast. So I'm sorry if it's a repeat for our hardcore listeners, but was at a church one time that did have screens, actually. But didn't put on their screens the words to the hymns they were singing. They had hymnals, but they didn't even verbally say we're on hymn number 115 or whatever, because they were like, well, these are hymns everyone knows. There's no such thing as a hymn that everyone knows. The hymnal you grew up with is different from the hymnal I grew up with. I grew up singing hymns. It's a different set of hymns than the hymns at this church, different hymnal. So they just assumed everyone would know. So it might sound like silly. You might think, does this church exist? It exists. And this happened at a church that had screens, but they didn't put the words up to the hymns. They didn't put the hymn number up. AJ, you had a really good point when we were working on this list. If you've got pew Bibles, don't just put on the screen, you may put the reference, the Bible reference during the sermon, or you may even put the full text of the verse on the screen, which is good too. But include the pew Bible page number. This Bible literacy is really low in the United States. And so it's a way to actually help guests be able to work their way around the Bible and go, oh, okay, well, I didn't know where Job was. Right. They don't know it's right before Psalms. They don't know where Psalms is, right? Like, so it helps them learn the Bible and learn where things are at. So include those pew Bible page numbers.
Yeah, that I've only seen that once. That was just a church that we were working with, Scott, and they did that, and I thought that is a great idea. If you're providing Bibles, give the page number, because especially, I mean, you know what? I hope today was the first Sunday somebody has ever walked into a church. Yeah. I hope that happens at your church this Sunday. And if you tell them, to turn to 2 Chronicles chapter 4, they don't have a clue. But if you can go to page 219 in your Bible there in front of you, and this is where we're going to start. You're ahead of the game.
Yeah, and a lot of churches do this, but it's a great thing to think about, especially for Easter. But let people take those pew Bibles home if they don't. If you don't have a Bible, take that pew Bible home. It's yours.
Yeah, another great point. Yeah, a lot of churches have done that. And I think that's great.
a
Let
good
this
thing
be
to
our
do.
gift to you today. So,
Yeah.
okay. Number 5, make it easy for guests to get connected, Scott.
Yeah, again, I feel like this one's a no-brainer, but worked with some large churches, several in the last year actually, and none of them had something like this.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of shocking. But we're asking new people very often to go from a big room, like being online, watching a service, or being in person in a worship service, and then we say, "Hey, join a group, or join a team, or whatever our next step is in our process." But that's a big jump, and we need some intermediary step, some sort of a newcomer event, something that transitions someone from being a complete new person, everyone's a stranger, or most everyone is a stranger, to I feel comfortable here, I feel welcome here, I feel like I can make a connection. So um, plan after Easter to have something, pizza with the pastor, a newcomer's lunch, anything.
Mm-hmm.
I've been talking about steak with the staff for a long time, and I've yet to have a church take me up on that one. I think that would be great. But you get the idea. It's really difficult to get guests to move from a big room to a small room, and a lot of churches are missing out on having guests take that next step because it's really hard, and all the burden is on them, right? To go, okay, yeah, I'm ready to take that next big step to be around a bunch of people I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And also, it's important now to consider having an online equivalent of that. Do some sort of special newcomer Zoom meeting, something like that. Guests are going to go to your church online first before they attend in person, in
Yeah.
all likelihood. They may come to your church on Easter, but they probably watched on Palm Sunday online, or sometime during the week before Easter, watched your online service or scrubbed through it. So, have an online version of a newcomer event as well, not just something in person.
Yeah. This should already be planned out. So don't go 6 months. Go, we've had quite a few guests over the last few months. Let's plan something. Plan it now. And that way you can be talking about these dates.
Right.
Ideally it's maybe once a month. But even if you're only if you're getting 2 guests a month, and then you can communicate with them individually, and you can say, hey, you know what, we're just going to plan a little thing after church for us, to get together and talk. But if you're getting more than that, a handful a month at least, then plan monthly things. And it doesn't have to be a big expensive deal. You could probably carve out a little bit of budget money for that, but always have the next date known so that you can be talking about it every week. And you don't want it to be like 6 months from now in January, like, hey, in July, we're going to be having a newcomer's lunch. So stick around for 6 months with us, and then we'll tell you about us. So,
right. I always like to have it as is an announcement every week.
Yep.
Hey, our next newcomer's lunch is on such and such date, and it's no RSVP required. So, if it's your very first Sunday and you'd like to come to newcomer, lunch is on us. And you might go, well, how would I plan for food? It's really easy, especially if you're doing something like pizza. You buy one extra pizza over what you think is going to be there. You might take a couple of times to get it right, but it's not that hard. And then if it's something like pizza, you give it to the youth kids and they'll eat it.
Feed it to the hogs.
Yeah, it'll be fine. No food will be wasted, I promise.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. You're going to, how many guests you might expect on any given Sunday. So if today is the Sunday, you should be able to confidently say from the platform that morning, hey, if you didn't RSVP, that's okay. We want you to come today anyway after church. So yeah.
That's right. You got
it. All right. Moving on. Number 6, invite your congregation to share your messages online. So we're certainly well into the social media age at this point, and people.
What's social media? I'm not sure what that is.
Make sure your MySpace page has ways for people to share. Just make it easy for people to be able to share what you're doing. First of all, be there, have shareable things, and then encourage your people. Cultivate an online culture with your people, with your guests, and be able to share things that are meaningful and important.
Yeah, It's tough. I'm not none of us are big fans of trying to create a cult of personality around your pastor or anything like that. Or if you are the pastor, you probably are like, I don't know that I want to just be putting out clips of me talking and make it about me. But at the same time, if you have a really practical point and it's 30 seconds long, throw some captions on that. It's really important for social media stuff that you have captions, because a lot of people, let's just be honest, they're sitting on the toilet and they don't want to have the volume up right while they're scrolling. So have captions on that video and they can watch.
Gone to a new level here on the podcast.
Are we being honest on this podcast or not? Right?
That's how know that we're being honest now.
But they're not going to turn the volume up. They're not. So have captions on that video, or they're sitting on a bus, or they're or they're whatever. There's any number of public places
time at work. For sure.
Wasting time at work. That's right. So have a 30-second clip of your sermons from each week, something like that you're encouraging people to share. Those things matter. I probably wouldn't encourage people to share the whole 45-minute message. It's unlikely people are going to sit and watch that, but a 45-second clip for sure.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of that's very closely connected, Scott, to number 7 here. Also, pay special attention to your online services. So clips are fine. If all you can do is clips, do clips. But of course, if you can have your full sermons available online, certainly do that. There's probably not too many churches left at this point that aren't doing something online. And it doesn't have to be a big budget thing. There's a lot of inexpensive ways to do it. But pay attention.
Much of it is so bad, though, AJ.
I was about to say, pay attention to the details. I mean, you don't have to spend a lot of money to get some decent lighting, especially if you're, like solo pastor, you're shooting it maybe, in your den at home, and that's what's going on. Look at what's going on behind you a little bit, get the lights looking pretty good. And, check out
the biggest miss for a lot of churches, AJ, is the music. And we talked about this in a webinar that we did a while back, sometime last year. But it's the music that's a problem. I've watched a lot of online services in the last year, and very often, AJ, I just have to turn it off. I have to mute it, or I'll scrub to where the sermon is or whatever. I can't watch it. It's so bad. And it's not a reflection of the quality of the musicians even. It's just the mix is not good. The vocals against the instruments, it's so bad. And the reason I'm mentioning this, and I've said this a few times now today, but if you don't get the point, it's really important. People will watch your services online first. They absolutely will. And if they go online and it's just so cringy to listen to the music, they're not going to want to show up in person. And I know that it doesn't sound the same in person as it does online. But if your first impression of your church's music is what they heard online.
Yeah. We might have to do an episode on this, Scott, on just kind of some best practices for good online and in-person audio. So
we should get an expert who's good at
that's what I'm thinking. No, we're not expert enough. I've got somebody in mind. We'll talk.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. But we said this in the notes. Enlist help. Get some help. Get someone, not us. We're not online audio. We're the people who can tell you your online mix. We can shoot straight with you and say it's not good. But we're not the people to fix your mix. But you should get someone to help you, because it matters.
Yeah,
it really does.
Stay tuned for a future episode of the Church Revitalization Podcast. All right, number 8, provide an example Sunday school lesson for kids. And the broader picture on this as well, know that people have kids. Let's look at for families. Okay, let's address families online. But Scott, this is a really good one. I think this might be one of the most unique points in this list, actually, that maybe somebody hadn't thought of.
Yeah, I mean, people want to know what's gonna happen. Like, I would just, this goes back to some of what we were saying earlier about masks and things like that. But people want to get an idea of like, what is my kid going to show up to? What's it going to be like? And so having, an example lesson would help them understand what the flow is like, and maybe what kinds of things they might be taught. Also, post pictures of what your children's ministry is like. Now, if you're going to post pictures that have kids in them, you need to be sure you have a photo release, release from the parents that those pictures can be posted online. But, you can take pictures of your volunteers, get permission from them to do that. You don't have to have the fronts of kids' faces. You could have back of kids' heads, from the back of the room or whatever. But show. Don't just tell me, show me what it's going to be like. Hopefully you have a kid-friendly environment. Take pictures of what that looks like. And so those things matter. I know as a parent, I've got 2 young kids. I'm always online. Actually, I just signed my son up for an extracurricular activity. I spent 30 minutes going through this website trying to get a feel for exactly what's going to happen and what will the lessons be like and what's this going to be like. Parents are all about that. So the more information you can provide about that without it being like lots and lots of text. Again, pictures are good. A PDF they can download, some key points makes a big difference.
Yeah. If the thought of posting pictures of your children's ministry area is like, ooh, I don't know if we want to do that, push pause right now and go start working on that.
Go paint those rooms. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Number 9. This one could have been number 1. Guys, even guys notice this, but the ladies for sure, clean the bathrooms. This is number 9. Clean the bathrooms. Clean is one thing. Some things are clean, but they don't look clean. And, that's bad too. You might know it's clean, but if others don't think it's clean because it looks grungy and old, then whether that rusty surface has been sanitized or not doesn't matter to anybody, or whether that peeling paint just had 409 wiped over it a few minutes ago isn't going to matter. So those bathrooms have got to be.
I feel like I got to get something off my chest too, AJ.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Scott.
On bathrooms. I'm just putting something together in my mind. I think that churches are just on a percentage basis more likely to have a passive aggressive sign in their bathroom more than any other public restroom, like more than a store or a restaurant. Restaurants would probably be number 2, no pun intended. But be sure you pee in the middle. Like, don't jiggle the handle. Like, there's some sort of passive aggressive communication on how you're supposed to. Like, your bathroom should work.
Mm-hmm.
Let me just
shouldn't need instructions.
It shouldn't need instructions, right? Like,
you're probably thinking of the same place that I am, Scott. We certainly won't name them.
I can think of multiple churches I've worked with where I was like, this sign is.
Remember that place that we were at together?
Uh-huh.
There was a sign about a noise you might hear or something like that.
If you hear a noise, contact an elder right away. And I remember thinking, well, what noise might I hear? Number 1, and 2, how would I know who an elder is? Like, that was a mess. But I've seen a lot of like, don't jiggle the handle, or do jiggle the handle, or hold it down all the way, or don't flush this, or don't flush that. Like, these are grown adults. Like, people know not to flush. Paper towels down. And if they don't know, they are not the people who are going to read your sign. You know what I mean? Like, your sign is not going to stop them. So get rid of the weird signs. Make sure the bathroom you just don't want it to be a weird experience for people.
Yeah. And if you think keeping the bathroom stocked is the cardboard carton with 100 rolls of toilet paper on the floor next to the sink, no. Find another place to put that stuff. Have somebody just pay attention for when you need an extra roll in there.
Oh, that's such a good point too. And like, your paper towel thing, does it work? You know what I mean? How many times have you went into a bathroom and whatever the paper towel situation is, it didn't work, and so
Yeah.
they just had a stack of paper towels sitting next
Yeah.
to the sink that's
Right.
all wet because water has gotten on the counter. Just replace the thing and put something that works up on the wall. Like, these are the kinds of detailed things that
Yeah.
people pay attention to.
Yeah. Fill the holes from the other 4 previous paper towel holders that used to be larger or next to it or something.
Yeah, right.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, we this might be a sensitive spot for both of us.
Yeah, thanks for letting me get that off my chest. But I really, a pet peeve of mine is signs in the bathroom telling me how to use the bathroom. Like, your bathroom should just work. And if it doesn't, spend $1,000 on getting that figured out. Your bathroom should work and it should be clean. There you go.
Okay. All right. Another hot topic in churches. Number 10, encourage members to greet new people. And that's a great idea. People should be friendly. Be a friendly church. How about that? And having a greeting time is fine. Do not single people out. And so I've been to churches where they're like, hey, if you're a guest, please stand up. And I've been to churches where they say, if you're a guest, please stay seated. And everybody around you is going to stand up around you. It's the same thing. And don't do that. So let's just be friendly. How about we just be natural and be humans that, care about other humans and greet them and just make it easy going and light and short and let us just kind of move on. And
I'm just gonna be honest. I'm not a huge fan of the take a minute to greet your neighbor or say hello. I don't love all that stuff. I didn't love it pre-COVID. I don't like it post-COVID. It doesn't work. Obviously, right now people are like, do I elbow bump you? What are we do? We're just saluting one another. Like, what's going on? You can't see people's faces if they're wearing a mask. You don't know if they're smiling. It's just all of that doesn't work. So I would want to replace all that, because here's what usually happens, AJ, is people they go to greet your neighbor. The first thing you do is you look for someone you think you might know. Right? And you find that person, you're like, hey. And so what happens is, if you're the guest, they end up turning to their spouse and going, hey, neighbor. Right? Because they don't, it's all of that is awkward. So just stop doing all that. The number of churches I've worked with were like, we just love that greeting time. And I'm like, it's not working. All it is a chance for you to talk to your pal who's sitting kind of close to you, and guests don't like it. They just feel like they have to endure it. No one ever who is a guest went to a church, sat through one of those and goes, wow, this church is so welcoming. That wasn't what did it.
So really, the more of the point here, because it's one of our points, is you should have a welcoming culture in the church anyway. When you church member go to your seat and there's somebody you don't recognize sitting near you, say hi, introduce yourself. You don't need a specific instruction time laid out to force people to do that. And that's going to be more genuine anyway. I mean, if you've just been told to say hi to the person next to you, how genuine does that come across? So
not at all.
Yeah, just do it naturally. This is
counterintuitively, right? You would think, well, if we're have this carved out time, then people will do it. The irony is, you have the carved out time and people turn to someone they know. And it feels, even if you turn to someone you didn't know, it's like your mom telling you, okay, say thank you. It's like, it's not genuine.
Yeah.
Because you were told to say it. So you want to start with lead. You're going, well, how do I do that? I'm not necessarily welcoming church. How do we do that? It's a process, and you may not have it together by Easter, but you want to put expectations on your staff and on your senior leaders. I was really guilty of this. I'll just be honest. I would get in the zone, when I was working on staff in church, and I had a lot of plates spinning. AJ's probably been able to see this in my work now with the Malfers group. I can just get in a zone, and my face is not necessarily smiling or kind or anything. And so I had to have people in my life who would pull me aside and say, watch what your face looks like when you're moving around the building. I know you're not trying to be mean. I know you're focused on the next thing you have to do, but new people are paying attention to what your face is saying. And it might be communicating something different than what you intend. And so I would encourage you to have that same conversation with the people on your staff and your senior leaders. I know they're busy on a Sunday, but if they can model having a smile and noticing new people and welcoming them, that starts to spread. And so it's much better to create a culture than to, have this forced fake 30 seconds of welcome that you're really just using to transition between songs.
And you likely and hopefully have a communications channel directly to speak with your regular attenders and members. This could be handled offline. Through, your monthly newsletter or an email, and say, because of whatever, we're just not going to be doing our greeting time. But we really want our church to, be able to show our welcoming nature to guests that come in. And so you can tell people offline how you would prefer things to happen. And you are still instructing them. If it's not coming naturally to them already, then they might need a little bit of bump that direction. But that's still different than commanding it from the front of the church every Sunday.
Yep. Last one, AJ.
Last one, number 11, create a clear connection desk, some kind of a point in your lobby space or somewhere easy to find in the church that this is where people can get their questions answered. This is where you want your happiest, friendliest people to be. Those folks that their spiritual gift is hospitality. They love your church. They love it when guests are there. And they want to be able to get them the information that they would like to know at that moment in time. Have this somewhere in the church and communicate it clearly so that people know when's the best time for them to be there, where it is, and who they might find when they show up.
Yeah, something I've seen a lot is this becomes the congregation point for people who normally show up. And this is something you want to avoid. So you have some of your friendliest extroverted people they've got a lot of friends at the church or whatever, and all those friends come up to them at the connection desk after church to go and have a conversation with them. That's not what you want. You want those people to go, hey, I'm working. You want to be sure that lane stays clear for guests. That's just one of those things you want to watch. You might be listening going, we have that. Okay, well, is it getting cluttered with people who are there every week? Or is it because if a guest sees a line or they see a big crowd standing there, they're going to be not stopping there. So be sure that stays clear. Another thing you want to keep in mind is what's a virtual version of your connection desk? Not that you have to have like somebody sitting in a Zoom room just waiting for someone to show up, but think about that guest relevant information. So not all 50 of your announcements, but what are the 3 or 4 things you'd really want to communicate to a guest? And how can all that information be centralized in one spot so they don't have to poke around your website for 45 minutes, that you can say, yes, mychurch.com/I'm new, something like that, where they can go on a Sunday, fill out obviously some sort of virtual connection card, but also get information, not just a form that they fill out, but also get relevant information for them that's maybe different from the normal bulletin or whatever. So just think about those things. We're in this parallel physical and digital world. This is forever now. Just accept that. So if you have band-aids on these things from COVID, it's time to create permanent versions of these things that you can sustain long term.
Yeah. Well, thanks for being with us this week, and we hope that these tips will help you in this upcoming Easter and every Sunday. So really take a close look at how you handle guests and make sure that you really are offering a welcoming and enjoyable environment for people to come to know you, and more importantly, to come to know Jesus. Thanks for being with us on the Church Revitalization Podcast, and we'll be back with you again next week. In the meantime, we would love to help your church do its absolute best. And to do that, you need to be able to make good decisions. And to do that, we have our church ministry analysis. You can visit malfirstgroup.com/CMA to get more information about that. And if you would just like to communicate with us and tell us what's going on in your church, we'd love for you to do that. You can email us at leadership@malfirstgroup.com. And we'd even love to send you a free sample report so you know what that church ministry analysis would look like whenever you get it into your hands. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you next week.